This is it, election eve. Tomorrow's the big day. And so it's time for one last look at the polls. But really, let's just look at one polling group, the most talked about polling group this election cycle, Trafalgar Group. And their chief pollster, he's the most talked about pollster. He's bringing the bow tie back. He's Robert Cahaly. Robert, thanks for joining us. I know it's your busy season. Thanks for giving us some time.
I do sometimes feel like Santa on Christmas Eve at this point.
I bet.
Absolutely.
I would love to, before we get into some of the polls and some of the results that you're seeing, let's talk about why Trafalgar Group is, once again, they're calling you an outlier, although you keep getting it right every election cycle, so you'd think the rest of the polling community would catch up to your methodology. What makes Trafalgar different?
You know, I look at like a bank. You know, years ago, banks were just one way. You walked in, you made a deposit. And then they realized people were changing, technology was changing. Some people would use an ATM. Some people would use, touch tone, calling on the phone, or some people would use an app. So the bank recognized everybody's need for privacy, personal interaction, and embrace of technology, and built systems to let everybody, do business with them. And the ones that did that survived, and the ones that did not, did not. The polling industry is different. The ones that have adapted are still around, are doing well, and then the other ones are still around, and it's frustrating because they don't like us because, we're streaming music and they're still operating on CDs.
Or maybe even an LP or a 45, if you're old enough to remember that technology. Well, what is it you do different, though, in terms of catching up to the way people respond to polls now? Is there something specifically unique about how Republican voters or likely Republican voters will respond to a pollster versus a voter who usually or generally would vote Democrat?
In general, what we do different is we, first of all, don't believe in long questionnaires. If you're trying to get a ballot test, you're trying to get a good horse race number, you're losing average people. They wonder why they overestimate college graduates. They ask 45 questions. Average people are busy, and the kind of people that sit around and ask us that many questions tend to be the kind of people with like multiple degrees. So it's one of those things. The first question we always get is, how long is this going to take? You can start that questionnaire telling them it's going to be short, 5, 10 questions, 9 questions at the most, but it'll take you 3 minutes, 2 minutes, however you do that. That's one major difference. Second, we always poll at least 1,000 per state. That's a major difference. They're selling nonsense of like 500, and we give people ways to participate digital. They can text, email, and our texts are even different. You don't click a link. You text back and forth the answers. So even people that are hesitant to click on a strange link will take our poll. And we tell you, you've got 48 hours to do it. So we do it on your schedule. We just kind of build it to meet people's modern lives. And they're stuck to an old-fashioned way of doing it, and they can't move on.
Well, and it certainly translated for Trafalgar Group a pretty uncanny track record here of accuracy over the most recent election. So, whatever you're doing it right. One other thing, again, before we get into the nuts and bolts of it per state, there's also this meme out there, this talking point. I saw Governor Kathy Hochul make this point in New York when confronted about the polls, where she says, well, there's Republicans, they're pushing out these fake polls. We've gone from fake news to fake polls. They're pushing out fake polls to make them look good, and they're fundraising off of it, but they're not real. And people have named your polls when they reference this. So is there anything to that Republican candidates are sort of playing with polls that just make them look good just for fun?
You know what they say, you accuse people of what you're already doing. Talk about fake polls. How about all of September and all of August and all that nonsense? Do you really think the American public swung 18 points with unaffiliated suburban women? No. They were the ones doing pump and dump, and there's no question about it. You look at all of us, and we've been consistent the entire time. People didn't just start worrying about groceries and inflation in the border yesterday and crime.
Yeah.
They've been worried about it all summer. They were the ones putting out the fake polls to help raise money on Hollywood and Silicon Valley and Wall Street, and they did it. Look at their success. Look at all the money that's been raised. No, what they're talking about is that some of the polls affiliated with Republican pollsters are more dominant in this fall. And you know what that reason is? It's because the media has withdrawn. Think about it. This is the week before the election. When's the last time you didn't see the major networks put polls out the week before the election?
Right.
Because the media has three choices. Choice A, tell the truth and give momentum to the Republicans. Choice B, keep the nonsense pumping up the Democrat numbers and look foolish on election day. Choice C, do nothing and hope people will forget all your nonsense the last 2 months. They have chosen C.
Makes sense. All right. Well, that's not our choice here, so let's get to it. Since Governor Hochul started to poke the bear, let's stick in New York. How's it looking for Lee Zeldin right now?
We had that as a tie the last time we did it. I expect that race is going to be very close. I think the other polls were all saying 8 or 9. New York's a tough place.
Yeah.
But Zeldin's run a great campaign. It's the only state in America where crime is number one. And we also have uncovered a lot of people who wish Cuomo were still governor and are very upset about that. People in New York look at the Cuomos kind of like people in Massachusetts look at the Kennedys. While the rest of the country might have one opinion, the people in New York have a different opinion.
Huh.
And a lot of them miss him. They kept bringing it up. We even asked a question in this poll. If your choice today was Zeldin versus Cuomo, how would you vote? And Cuomo beats Zeldin 55-45. There's no doubt in my mind there are Cuomo people part of the Zeldin coalition, and there's a Cuomo machine exists in every county since the 80s. And for whatever reason, they don't seem to be on board with her.
Amazing. And you talk about those polls that we saw in August and September that showed Republicans in trouble. One of those polls showed Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. He was done. It was over. He's finally going to get voted out. How are you looking at Wisconsin right now? Because it sure seems like a different story today.
I mean, we've got Johnson up, I think, by 3. Here's the thing. I've said from the very beginning, this is an anti-incumbent here. And so the Republicans' luck, a lot of the seats that Republicans held, like Alabama, like Ohio, and like Pennsylvania, they weren't running incumbents. And so that's beneficial when people kind of want somebody new.
Okay.
And the other thing, and this always has to be stated, and that is there are a significant amount of Republican voters who, and this is different than 2016 when they were kind of shy, and 2020 and they were hard to find. These people, after Biden's speech, are convinced that the polls will be used to target them because they're convinced that Biden has now kind of declared war on MAGA Republicans. And they're telling us, hey, we're not taking the polls. People reaching out to us because they feel like they're going to be put on a list. They're going to be investigated. They're going to be audited. They're going to be canceled. And so I've said from the beginning, the Republican turnout will be greater than anything any poll predicts, including ours. And I think that wave could be between 0.5 point to 5.
So this undercounting of Republican voters includes your polls as well at Trafalgar Group. That's interesting. Fast,
Pennsylvania. I can't count people who don't take polls.
Right. I remember interviewing you before the presidential election of 2020, and I asked you about Pennsylvania, and it was over the phone, but I could hear you throwing up your hand saying, I don't know at this point. Pennsylvania is all over the map. Is it any easier this year, not only because of Pennsylvania's voting rules, but also this race, these two candidates? It's unprecedented. It's
going to be very difficult. One of the things, and this is, I have to admit, this is a strategic mistake that I think the Republicans made. By not giving Mastriano even the basic support that any Republican nominee for governor would get, they have hurt Oz. Because all these races are symbiotic. Whether people admit it or not, they are.
Yeah.
And so when your candidate for governor isn't getting the support, and we have a tighter race than most, if Mastriano be just given the same stuff any Republican nominee gets, Oz would be up by 5 points. That race would be over.
Yeah.
But they have not done that, and that's so Mastriano's got the grassroots and not a lot of the air war, and Oz has the air war, and it has a candidate with real problems, but Oz is dealing with the out of town, the likability, and it's going to be tough.
Robert Cahaly, great talking with you. Thanks for educating us about the polls this year, and get back to work. I know it's going to be busy for you. More to come on O'Connor Tonight.